You're listening to CoBB, Conversations on the Business of Brands, with Sudeep Chawla and Sharan Raghavan.
We're recording this over the weekend, and looks like you've been watching a lot of Cartoon Network and Tom and Jerry. Why this topic and why now?
Okay, so number one, I don't see any problem with watching Tom and Jerry. I still find it funny. No, but this is not the result of Tom and Jerry watching. In fact, last week I was sitting with my sales and marketing team, and I was talking to them about this particular aspect, where I thought that the marketing team can do lot more in terms of supporting sales team tactically for the present month, for the present quarter, than they actually think they can. And hence that is something that I was trying to impress upon them, and similarly on the sales team, as to how can they involve marketing team in getting their objectives met, the immediate objectives met. And that is how it occurred to me that this is something that we should talk about.
As in, you were talking to both of them in the same room.
Yeah, of course.
Wow. That's very bold.
No, actually, having done the marketing role over a period of time, I have in fact come to realize that this is possibly the best way of going about it, and hence I wanted to make sure that I'm able to share it with both the guys.
Sure, makes sense. As in, this is, as like I said, is as old as Tom and Jerry. Sales versus marketing. And it's funny how a lot of people outside the industry confuse sales for marketing and marketing for sales. And internally, it's always a push and pull game that goes on.
Yeah, of course. So the first time I told anybody that I work in Cadbury marketing, and to them in my hometown at least, the marketing means that door to door salesman. That's their
Exactly.
definition of marketing.
Yep.
So they thought that I'm going to now carry Cadbury chocolates and go from door to door. Not that I was doing any different in sales. I was going from shop to shop. And since I was, when I was in ASM, I was selling the mass market portfolio of Cadbury, which is the rupees 5 and below. So therefore, I was going from pawn shop to pawn shop and selling my stuff. But you're right. So people don't, common man doesn't understand the difference between sales and marketing. And when you get into a company like any FMCG company, suddenly you realize too many differences between sales and marketing. And that today's discussion, hopefully, I'll try and bridge some of those differences, and in fact make people realize that there is very little difference between the two.
If there is very little difference between the two,
Hmm.
then why are the two always at loggerheads?
That is because I think the traditional way of looking at sales and marketing has been in a manner which has trained them to look at two very different viewpoints. When people talk to sales guys are measured on their delivery, and the delivery is every month, every week, every bucket, or whatever you might call it, from closing to closing. So you are as good as your last closing, is what they say. And hence, for the sales guys, it is very, very critical that the current delivery is happening while they are building for the longer run. On the other hand, when they talk to a marketing guy, the marketing guys are given to believe that their consumer comes paramount, and therefore they are supposed to do what is best for the brand in the long term.
But don't consumers come paramount anyway?
They do, yes. Consumers are paramount because the businesses exist to serve them. Yeah, but they are taught that you're supposed to do what is best for business, what is best for consumers in the long term, in the long run.
Right.
And when somebody tells them that, immediately they think that doing something for immediate delivery possibly comes at the cost of long term or the long run, what you want to work upon. And that is where the differences start.
Got it.
So they're not supposed to be at loggerheads. Unfortunately, in most of the scenarios, we find them on the opposite side of the table. In fact, what I would possibly say is that our today's discussion is not just relevant to people who are setting up their sales and marketing functions, Yeah,
Mhm.
or people who are just about to enter into this, but it is also relevant to people who have just been promoted to marketing, or people who are in sales, or who dream of getting into marketing soon enough.
Could you explain that thinking? Because I cannot understand what you're saying, right? Because as a management trainee, you
Hmm.
most often start in sales
Hmm.
and you're looking for the day you can move into marketing.
Yeah.
So this would imply that you understand sales
Hmm.
and therefore you will be able to empathize better.
Yes.
Where does this change happen?
So while you empathize with sales, and I agree with that way of building careers, once you move into marketing, people often will tell you that when you come into marketing, you are supposed to look at slightly larger picture and build perspective over a longish term. So you are asked to immediately pull out. Don't go into micro, don't go into execution immediately. Pull out, ask yourself why, how do I change it, etc. etc. And while you pull that person out, it takes a lot of effort, and possibly at the start of marketing career, a lot of effort goes in pulling them out, and that possibly results in them zooming out too much, so much so that a lot of the times, at least I did this, you almost start losing touch with daily execution, which is actually happening in the field and which is honestly paying everybody's salary in the company.
Right. I think all of us are guilty of this, right?
Yes.
Because the moment you move from the Excel sheet of sales to the PowerPoint of marketing,
Hmm.
you completely forget how your formulas were put together on the Excel sheet.
Correct. And therefore, I said that this is also relevant to people who are just about to move into marketing, who desire to move into marketing, or who have just moved in. And while all of you guys will be required to pull out, think about the larger perspective. Why is the brand doing what it is doing? That is definitely necessary. But as soon as you are able to, as soon as you can manage, do make sure you zoom in and possibly follow what we are going to recount from our experiences, our examples, and possibly give you an advice on. Where I start my argument from, Sharan,
Hmm.
is that you said that both are supposed to be at loggerheads with each other, sales and marketing, and I was telling you they are not supposed to be.
Right.
Now, supposed is a very, very different world. Let's get
Idealistic. Yeah.
idealistic world. So let's get real. You will always find that marketers are pulled out, they will be asked to zone out, and sales guys will be pushed on delivery. And that is the reality of the world. And therefore, I often find that, you know, some of the very senior sales guys or some of the more experienced marketing guys are able to transcend these boundaries and make sure that both sales and marketing work in conjunction with each other, so much so that while the short term objectives or businesses are getting met, the sales team also keeps supporting as well as giving very, very rich and qualitative feedback on the long term thinking of the brand as well. And therefore, I would put the onus equally on the sales guys as well as the marketeers. And because we address marketeers more, and hence for the purpose of this podcast, let's focus our attention on the marketeers, the current ones or the ones who are about to get into it. So my appeal would be to the marketeers to tell them that there is a way of thinking around it, and hence it's not an either or scenario. Yeah, they don't need to sacrifice their long term thinking, their zoned out thinking, to support the delivery of immediate sales objectives.
So what kind of support are we talking about? Because as marketers, you
Hmm.
are managing a P&L
Hmm.
in most cases. And sales wants everyday activations and promotions. So what exactly do you mean by supporting everyday business?
Think of it this way, Sharon. First, let's start from a very, very selfish objective.
Okay.
Supporting sales almost seems like a slightly more, selfless way of going about it,
Benevolence.
benevolence of the marketeers. But let's start with a very selfish objective.
Sure.
The selfish objective is that a lot of the work that the marketeers do, and if they are moving in the right direction, takes a little bit of time to materialize into long term changes, because what you're trying to do is you're trying to guide the consumer behavior, trying to nudge them, and hoping that they will behave in a manner which you desire, and hence it will benefit your brand in the short as well as long run. but it takes time. Changing behavior, training behavior, creating habits take time. Now, how do you get that time? Yeah, so therefore, marketers need significant backing of top management, and I would say they need significant backing of their sales partner.
Could you explain that? Because aren't sales supposed to back the brands and the business anyway? What's the specific backing a sales is going to give marketing?
Think of scenarios where possibly your brand is slightly under pressure, sales team is finding it difficult to sell, or there is a market, some kind of development in the market which is making it difficult for the sales team to achieve their numbers. The brand team will immediately feel the heat to support the business immediately. And a lot of the times, Sharon, you and I have seen that means putting resources up front. And where are those resources coming from? They are coming from whatever you had thought you would commit to your long term thinking, habit creation, etc. Finally, we have limited time, money, and energy. Whatever you expend on, which means that you're not going to expend it on something else which you had planned. So, therefore, I start my argument by saying that marketers need significant backing from top management as well as their sales colleagues. And hence, there is a selfish objective to all of this, whatever I am saying. If marketers want to make sure that their work of the long term keeps happening and it does not get compromised on, and they're not pulled into, doing tactical stuff against their wishes, therefore, my advice is twofold. First advice is to make sure that whatever your long term plan is, apart from aligning it and presenting it to your top management, do present it to your sales leadership as well.
Okay. You're saying we should separately get the buy in of the sales leadership in addition to your own marketing leadership.
Yes, and the buy in will not come in easy because the sales team finally wants to understand what is in it for me. How soon can you start showing results? But what I've seen is that, see, if everybody is working for the betterment of the business, therefore everybody wants to create something which will create better business, better growth, and hopefully better incentives for everybody. Now, sales guys are the hardest to please. And therefore, in one of the previous podcasts, as I was saying, when you're creating a marketing brief, whatever a marketer is doing, you're pitching your idea.
Right, right,
This is
right.
the hardest pitch that you will get through.
You're saying you don't just pitch it to your creative agencies. When you see your sales team as your partners and not your foes, you end up having to win their trust as well.
Correct.
So pitch it to them, and I assume it goes back to the storytelling that you're very famous for.
100%. 100%. So tell the story to them. And in fact, I would say that tell your story to the sales guys before you tell it to your creative team.
Oh,
What that does is the sales guys will tell you whether that story sounds credible or not. When you're talking to the creative team, marketing team, etc., they're all dreamers. They like to dream. The sales team will pull you down to the ground and they'll tell you whether that story flies or not, whether it seems credible or not. And what that does is don't take it as a yes or a no. Find the pieces of feedback in what they are saying and use that interaction to make your story stronger, make your pitch stronger. And I believe that a story that has gone through the grind of having pitched to the sales team always emerges significantly stronger than what it was in marketer's head.
true, true. I agree with that. Yeah.
Yeah, so there's the first, and therefore you have to find the right partner in the sales team.
Given that both are operating out of different perspectives, long and short, let's say looking at the short term, is there a chance that your long term plans will get shot down by the sales team when you pitch it to them?
I would say that, and therefore I said sales leadership. I am not saying you talk to the sales manager. A sales leadership is also worried about the numbers 12 months hence or 6 months hence.
Right.
They want immediate delivery and they want this one also. So, in fact, they might take it up with you that, okay, Sharan, the plan looks good, but this plan I believe is going to take 9 months to materialize. What do we do till then? So,
Right.
that conversation will always happen, and that's a healthy conversation, and it is
True.
better to have it sooner than later.
Okay. I get that. What
Yeah.
about the rest of the sales team?
So, rest of the sales team, you go back to them once you have a little bit of your package ready.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Okay.
The sales team wants to see. Yeah, they believe in some tangible things. You can tell your story to the sales leadership team, you can tell the story to your partners, but when you get to the rest of the sales team, you have to show them something tangible.
As in the designs and the execution piece.
Designs, advertising, pack, plan, some amount of creatives. They want to, they are the guys who are the look and feel guys.
Got it.
They will be able to tell you when a dealer or a retailer or your consumer sees it, how will they react. So the as you go down the level, the tangibility of the delivery has to increase. The elements start playing the role.
I think that's a very good point. As you go down the line, the tangibility of what you're presenting has to increase.
Yeah. So you go from principles to elements. The higher up you go, you align on principles. The lower down you go, you align on tangibles.
You're listening to CoBB, Conversations on the Business of Brands. Your hosts are Sudeep Chawla, marketing practitioner, business leader, and educator to advertising and marketing professionals, and Sharavana Raghavan of Vitril Innovations, consultants to consumer-facing brands and businesses. For more information, go to copcast.net. If you find this podcast helpful, please help us by telling your friends and rating us.
We said that the marketeers need long-term backing, top management as well as the sales team. There are two ways of securing it from the sales team. The first one was pitching your idea, plan, etc. to the sales leadership team, getting their idea, getting their reaction to it, using it to solidify your plan, make it refined, make it better, make it stronger. The second part is about supporting them. And you asked me, how can you support them? What I believe, Sharan, is that a sales team has to conduct certain activities every month for their delivery. Some of these activities would be in the form of for example, a scheme or an offer.
Could you explain what a scheme is?
So, for example, you might say that when we were in chocolates, when we were selling chocolates, there were a number of months which we knew will have significant consumer offtake for chocolates. For example, Diwali or Rakhi or Valentine's Day. So if Valentine's Day is 14th Feb, you know that you would want to stock up the dealers in second half of January and first half of February. Therefore, you know that the sales team would run some kind of a scheme which will incentivize the retailers to purchase more chocolates than they otherwise do. And not because we want to dump the stock, but we know that the kind of offtake that's going to come on 14th Feb or 13th Feb or the weekend before it will immediately wipe off all the stock from the market. And if you're not there, if you don't have sufficient stock weight, you will lose market share. You won't get an opportunity to replenish the stock at that very instant.
Preloading of stock in trade is what you're talking about.
Yeah. So that schemes could be of different kinds. So it is used for loading. It could be used for cross selling also. Yeah. If you have a very popular brand or a SKU and you want to make sure that this brand or a SKU creates the way for your another brand or another SKU that you believe can become very big, you would possibly run a scheme which rides one SKU on the other. Yeah, you might say that my 5 rupee SKU is present in 1 lakh shops, for example. I believe that my rupees 10 should at least go to 70% of them, which is 70,000 shops. So you might possibly say that, buy rupees 10 SKU of a certain amount and you will get scheme on the rupees 5 one. So it's a rider scheme. Yeah. So your schemes are designed to achieve certain strategic objectives. Yeah. Which could either be marketing led or could be sales led, efficiency led as they call them. So therefore your sales team would be running some schemes. They might be running some contests. They might be doing some activations in the market to achieve that month's or that quarter's numbers. Where a marketer can possibly help them is in the planning as well as in the execution phase. Now, when a sales manager is sitting and doing the planning for the number, they are trying to add up how will I deliver the number for this month by using whatever is at my disposal, resources as well as brands, stocks, etc. etc. So, they usually, I've seen the sales team has the tendency to do this by looking at past trends last year or last to last year, as well as what is happening currently in terms of last 3 months, last 6 months. Now what how you can influence this is, while they are aware of what happened last year, what happens in the last 6 months, etc., what they might not be aware of is what are you planning.
Right.
And therefore you might have a slightly different plan for something. You might be thinking about boosting something else, and it is excellent to give them visibility at the right stage so that they are able to account for the uplift that might come because of the help that you are extending.
Right. It could be sometime in the future so that they can plan for it.
They can plan for it, and therefore most of the companies look at developing what is called a 3 month or a 6 month rolling plan. Yeah, that's number one. Number two, when they are trying to arrange for stocks for their sales in that particular month, you will find that they will run into some kind of constraints on certain lines. Yeah,
Supplies. Yes.
supplies, etc., etc., and that's the reality of FMCG. And most of these supplies have certain amount of constraints theory built around them.
Right.
The same equipment is being used to make something else, etc., etc., and the sales team can only influence it that much.
Right.
Now once you understand that what is the criticality of a particular SKU and its production to that particular month's number, a marketeer can take the call of deprioritizing something else and unlocking the production capability of a particular SKU at the factory level, and thereby giving the sales team an immediate fillip. Again, I'm only talking about from a planning point of view. I've still not gone to execution, Sharan.
Right. Right.
So you're helping them in number planning, helping them by doing some amount of supply planning for them. Once all of that is tied up, then when you look at the market side, now if they're doing some kind of a scheming, again you can ensure that all of that scheming is thematic in nature. Schemes can be ad hoc, run in an ad hoc manner, with the objective of loading the trade, etc., etc., but you might add some more objective to it. You might add some strategic objective to it. Yeah, for example, your sales team might think that because 5 rupees is my biggest SKU, I need to run a scheme on my 5 rupee SKU and let's get it done. Yeah, it'll give me 20%, 30% fillip, and they'll be very happy with it. You might come in and say, Ki, my friend, why don't you do it over a 10 rupee line? This will add another SKU. This will increase what you call as number of lines that you're billing per shop, helps you achieve your overall objective, and it gives you an additional business which you can keep leveraging month after month. So this kind of a strategic intent in a tactical activity can also be brought in by the marketers. And then what you can also do is that you will support it with some kind of a fillip on rupees 10, and that's how you add a thematic lens or a strategic lens to a tactical activity that they were anyways planning to do. What is the purpose of all of this? Going back to our selfish purpose, this is not benevolence. The selfish purpose is that the sales team sees that this guy, and when I say sales team, it is majorly the sales leadership team, sees that this guy is damn interested in getting the delivery done. He or she understands the mechanics of the business, and therefore whatever story they develop and whichever way this story gets executed, this guy or this girl will make sure that the delivery happens in a manner which will give us confidence, which will give us sufficient tools for execution, and it will create widespread conviction in the delivery of numbers.
Right. Right. I think that's very well put, Sudeep. If I were to very quickly bulletize what you said so far for the TLDR generation,
Yeah,
say when you move from sales into marketing, don't forget to empathize with your sales counterparts.
yeah,
Don't unlearn too much of it, is one. Number two, get their buy in. Consider them your stakeholders and pitch to them and get their buy in. The higher up they are in the ladder in the sales organization, you can talk to them about principles. And as you go further, you have to show them tangibles. But the goal is to get their buy in and make yourself indispensable to their short term goals. So be partner with them, figure out ways to help them to meet the goals. It could be with supplies, it could be with a sense of pre-planning. So whatever it takes to help them reach the short-term goal, because the entire organization depends on the income that the sales team brings in. And last but not the least, despite doing the tactical support that you need to for sales, find a way to strategize it. And you will do that when you have the long term picture in mind anyway. Awesome. I think these are brilliant points, but I don't think it'd be fair if I ended this without an example from your past, because you're pretty famous for having among the nicest marketing guys who the sales team liked. So can you tell me something that's happened in your career where you ended up working from marketing with sales?
Yeah, sure. So there've been multiple things that I've done in the past, Sharan,
Mm-hmm.
and there've been things that I've done before this example that I want to quote. But I'm quoting this example because this is where my thinking, my way of approaching things became very, very different. And that's the philosophy that I've carried forward in my career thus far. This is in, early 2011 when I was handling brand Gems, my second year of handling brand Gems. And I was complaining to my boss that I have a problem. Most of the chocolate brands, the bigger chocolate brands, get all the limelight. They get slots for activation throughout the year.
Right.
Cadbury had a philosophy of what they used to call as big hit. So every month the sales team used to focus on one big hit, one or two big hits, and make sure that they are driven well. Because of the higher value contribution, Cadbury Dairy Milk, 5 Star used to get priority. Bonvita used to get priority, and therefore Gems never used to have the kind of focus that we thought it needed. And I was complaining to him consistently, and I thought that this is one of the barriers for growth for Gems. Despite whatever marketing thinking I might do, if I don't get the sales backing behind it, and if they're focused on some other brand, I will never be able to make it big.
Right. And when you say 2011, this must have been at the peak of the Kinder Joy attack.
Yeah. So this is the time. Just before this, I had launched Gem Surprise. I
Right.
had worked very closely with the modern trade team, to be very precise, and because that is where Kinder Joy had made the most amount of inroads, and I'd worked on creating Gem Surprise and launched it in the market with decent amount of success. So this is the second frontier, and while this is happening, I was working on the new proposition for Gems, and as a the work that I was doing, that had resulted into Raho Umarless proposition.
Right. I remember that from one of our early episodes.
Yes,
Yes.
yes, and I won an Insight of the Year award for that one, but that came later. I needed time and sales buy-in for so that I could work upon it. Before that, by the greatest unlock in my head happened when my boss suggested that why don't you take up a slot within the year that no other chocolate wants, and that slot was in May,
Why was that?
because May and June are typically extreme summer months,
Right.
and that is when most of the chocolates don't want to load up the trade because the chocolate melts. Even our fridges don't work in the kind of heat that prevails in the country. June, I think that year was reserved for Tang.
Okay.
You must have hogged that that big hit.
Yeah, people would know what happened to that if they heard the previous episode to this.
Correct, correct. We've already recorded that story. So
Yeah.
May is what I got. Yeah, and I thought it was a brilliant suggestion. And we were doing about 400 450 tons of gems at that point in time. And that is when I got along with another great friend of mine, Samir Yadav. He was uh, my customer marketing partner, trade marketing partner at that point in time.
Mm-hmm.
And both of us spoke about it, planned, etc., etc. We said we will deliver 600 tons of gems in May, and we called the activity as Mayhem. Yeah, aptly. And we said that gems had three parts during that time. There was the gems mini, the 1 rupee gems. There was the gems main brand, which was 5 rupee, and bigger portfolio, the tube and everything.
Mm-hmm.
And then there was the new launch called Gem Surprise.
Right.
And we said that we will put sufficient levers behind all three of them.
Mm.
I put advertising. Both of us thought through and put thematic schemes, designed trade enablers, designed sales contests, etc., etc. Created sales energizers for the brand, and we went behind this thing about delivering 600 tons. Now 600 tons was a net result. And frankly, once you get that ball rolling, it doesn't matter how much you delivered. We actually delivered 602, but what it did was it created a kind of domino effect, which, paid us back through the rest of the year as well.
Right. That is going to be a question, actually. Good point. So, what happened?
Yeah. So the key point, Sharan, at that point was that suddenly people realized that this is a brand which can give us returns. There is sufficient amount of work that happens on this brand, and if we need this kind of work, can be done for our geography. Now, a lot of the one more problem with marketers, and we'll possibly pick it up in another episode, is that we too often we see entire India as one. There are many Indias. Yeah. And my realization during that time was, while Gems might be the third biggest brand or the fourth biggest chocolate brand in the country, for certain geographies, it was the second biggest brand.
Oh, wow.
And for those guys, it was an eye opener to say, oh, okay, so much can happen on Gems. So therefore, why don't I take up Gems during the rest of the year also? Even if they have another big hit, they could call up, request for a enabler, etc., etc. They could keep the bandwagon moving. Those are a lot of unlocks happen which you haven't really thought about, but the unlock would happen only when you have struck a great partnership with your sales team.
Right. And I think the unlock you talk about also happened in the minds of the sales team to look
Correct.
at Gems with a different perspective as a brand that could help them meet the numbers in the short term.
Correct. Correct. Think of it that way, that otherwise the rest of the year it is you, your boss, and your customer marketing partner who is thinking about Gems. Now,
Right.
when you do a partnership of that kind, there are another 35 people in the field, at least the managers who are thinking about it. Suddenly, people thinking about Gems has gone from 3 to 38. Even if you don't get 12 times the output, a 5 times, 6 times, 7 times an output is an extremely fruitful exercise.
Absolutely.
So I think, and that is what unlocked something in my head, Sharan, and I've therefore turned a firm believer in marketers' responsibility to take sales along by doing these couple of things, and thereby become an even better marketer.
I think that's a wonderful point, Sudeep, in the fact that I think you picked the right example where it changed your perspective towards how you would work with sales from the marketing standpoint. And I think the lesson there is very clear as to how you can get disproportionate share of mind when you tend to work with the sales team and act as an enabler than as a foe. Marketers coming in, starting off their marketing careers, I think it'll hold them in great stead just to keep these points in mind. I think that's a wonderful story.
Thank you for listening to CoBB, Conversations on the Business of Brands with Sudeep Chawla and Sharan Raghavan. Subscribe and learn more at cobcast.net. That's COBBCAST.net.